I want to point out a gotcha with using a soch and with immutability generally. And that is, it's basically either all or nothing. And I want to show you what I mean. Let's say you have some object, let's call it 1, and let's say it contains some arbitrary key and value. And let's say you have some other object that contains a reference to that first object. So 2 now looks like this. Now you can swear that you will never mutate the second object, this object called 2, that you will only use a soch if you want to make a change to it. And that's all well and good, but the problem is, let's say somewhere else in your code, you or somebody else, doesn't really matter, mutates the object 1. And let's say they're adding, they're not using a soch, but they're actually adding a new property onto the object called 1. Well, then implicitly, your object called 2 has now changed as well. It hasn't exactly mutated because the key 1 only stores a reference to this, to the object called 1. But as far as you're concerned as a consumer of this object, if you now look at this object and make changes, it has changed from underneath you. And you were not aware of that change potentially. So what I'm getting at is, if you're going to embrace immutability, you better make sure that as much of your application as possible embraces immutability. Because otherwise, even if, say, half of your application is immutable, if a bunch of your objects contain references to other objects that are mutable, even if you never mutate this half of your objects, they might as well change anyway because you mutate the other half. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're going to use immutability, try to make as much of your application immutable as possible.